I had a profound experience in 2019. Richard talked a little bit about. I shared a lot about that experience on Friday night. I'm not going to get into the details of what I experienced today, but I want to talk about the synchronicities that happened for us to be here to explore how we know a source, a God, an all-knowing oneness, and how we connect to that through the power of feeling. Now, in 2011, I visited Marietta for the first time. I had never been here before. I was here visiting family, friends, and got a phone call. My mom, who lived in Michigan, had just gone into the hospital, and she was unresponsive but alive, and they had called me to come to the hospital as quickly as possible. So I immediately flew to Michigan, and over the course of 4 days, she quickly deteriorated. She was in the ICU. And on the night that we knew she wasn't going to make it, I had asked the hospital staff if they would find us a pastor to do a bedside prayer. The staff was beautiful. For all of the nurses out there, ICU nurses, all of those that are in the healing profession, you do such wonderful work. And this staff went to work to find us a pastor at 10 o'clock at night that would come to our bedside to have a prayer for my mom and for our family. A beautiful lady came in. She did an amazing prayer. Unbeknownst to me, she was a Unity pastor. Now, at the time, I didn't have a lot of experience with Unity, but the words that she used, how she shared her message, it moved me. My mom ultimately passed in the middle of the night, about 2:30 in the morning. And as I was considering how I wanted to put together her services, I reached out to this lady who came to our bedside and said, "You were so moving. You brought us so much peace. I would love for you to come and share a message with my mom, for my mom, at her service." And she did. Now, this is the beginning. Well, me being here when I got the call was actually the beginning, but this is the beginning of the synchronicities. My mom had a lifetime of struggle with addiction and alcohol. And unbeknownst to any of us, she was actually attending AA meetings at the same Unity church that this lady was the pastor of. So I got to know Sandy. This was her name. I got to know Sandy, and when I came back to Chicago, which is where I lived, I happened to discover, though I have driven by it a number of times, that I lived about 45 seconds from a Unity church. So I stopped by. And I got to know some of the individuals there. But in my first time there, I sat through the service. I walked up to the pastor after the service, introduced myself, explained why I was standing there in front of him, told him about this beautiful pastor in Michigan. He says, "Oh yeah, she was my boss for 10 years. So I became very connected to the Unity Church in my town there in suburbs of Chicago. I joined the youth ministry, I volunteered, and I attended my very first white stone ceremony, which I know many of you are familiar with. I attended 2 of them, and in the very first one, the word that I got was feel. Now, in terms of timing, this was somewhere around 2012, 2013. The next year, the church had its next ceremony, and the word I got was feel again. I had no clue what this word meant. I looked at it, I wrestled with it, I pondered it. I went looking for validation of its connection in my life. I didn't have any at the time. It wasn't until 2019 when I had a profound experience where I left this world, went to the other side, connected with an all-knowing, loving oneness. And what I brought back was that connection, that understanding of a God, a source, a universe. All the words work, by the way. They all come through feeling. And that these feelings are different than emotions, which I'm going to get into in just a moment. But I had forgotten about this little tile that I had created until one day I was sharing my story for one of the very first times on a podcast. This would have been August of last year. And Finley here had seen my podcast, reached out to me, and we began talking. And he says, there's this wonderful community. I would love to introduce you to their pastor, the Reverend. And I connected with Richard. They said, come on down. And I said, what town is this in? They said, Marietta. And I said, whoa. The entire last 11 years have come full circle right now for me to share with you that your deepest knowing, your deepest connection to something that is outside of this physical body, the part of you that is more than your physical body, comes through your feelings. Now, we can talk about creation, and many of you are probably very familiar with how to create, law of attraction, manifestation. But underneath all of those desires to create, whether it's abundance, a job, a house, a relationship, underneath all of that is a desire to connect to a feeling that will connect you to that soul part of who you are that is bigger than your physical body. I came back understanding that there are really 4 core feelings that represent that bigger part of us. Peace, love, joy, and believe it or not, grief. All of these experiences of those core feelings represent the depth of connection to something bigger than our physical experience. But it also represents the immense creative power and potential of how to create here in your physical life. Now, I mentioned that emotions are different than feelings, and I want to explain a little bit about what that means. When we have a feeling, imagine that you've gotten really great news, or something kind of got in the way of having a good day. Maybe you got a flat tire. You have a response, an immediate response, likely a very visceral response. Emotions are biological, they're reactionary. What I'm talking about is when you set those emotions aside and you get really still and really quiet and you connect to your being, you'll find that that's where the feelings live. So when we talk about creating the life that we would like to create, a truly loving, peaceful, joyful life, we want to start with the feeling first. So we start with that by asking ourselves, if I could feel the best I could possibly feel right now, what would that be? Now, I'll be honest, I have probably asked this question of people over the last couple of years no less than 500 times. Those that know me well joke around and say, yes, I know, I have to figure out how I feel. But the reason why this can be a process is because many times we're very aware of what we don't want to experience. We don't want to experience stress. So when I ask that question, you might be thinking, well, I'd love to feel less stress. I'd love to feel less pain. I'd love to feel less complications in my life. But that's what you don't want. I challenge all of you to allow yourselves to go into the place of what you do want to create. If you didn't have that stress in your life, what feeling would be there? If you didn't have that troubling relationship that was bringing you down and draining you, what feeling would be there? It is from that place that you can tap into the powerful creation of your life. The challenge is that is often the scariest place to go. 100% of us have gone through something traumatic in our lives. And because of that, we often find that when we can stay out of here, we might protect ourselves from feeling that pain of something we've experienced. But it's by going through that, allowing yourself to experience that, getting into that deeper part of who you really are, that's where you open up the door to experiencing the peace, love, and joy that you would like to experience. When you get into that place, I like to call it the flow. You just flow into your life. You flow from one loving, peaceful, joyful experience to another. It doesn't mean that human things don't happen. It doesn't mean that you aren't going to get that flat tire. But what it means is how you respond to those situations become a completely different experience. When you imagine, for just a moment, we'll use the flat tire, because I think all of us have probably had that happen at some point or another. If you're having a very disconnected day, you wake up, the laundry's on the floor, the kids are yelling, their grandkids are yelling, whatever the case might be. It's just a lot of chaos. You're having just this kind of day. You go, you get in your cart, and you got a flat tire. It's probably going to feel like, this is just one more thing. But if you're connected, if you spend the time to really get into that place of feeling, and you experience that inner peace, love, and joy, and then you go into your day, and then you get that flat tire, you'll look at that and go, okay. The experience, when we connect to that deeper part of ourselves, the experience of life, it becomes a playground. It becomes an opportunity to look at the person next to you and become curious as to what might this next adventure be with this person? Your loved one, your family, your friends, your life. Now, I talked about curiosity, and I want to just elaborate a little bit on this. And for those of you that did hear my talk on Friday night, this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but I think it's important enough to do that. When I was on the other side, one of the things that I connected to was completeness. And in that completeness, what I observed when I came back was that I couldn't ask a question. Because in that place that I was, everything was complete. And for there to be a question would infer that there's something unanswered. So the way that I connected to the knowing was through curiosity. I became curious about this, and I became curious about that. And now, sharing this message with you, curiosity is the key to exploring how those feelings, those deeper part of you, can bring the experiences you would like into your life. I'm curious as to what it would be like to be in love. I'm curious what it would be like to hold a baby. All of these things that you have likely used as tools for creation or law of attraction or manifestation, they're still absolutely valid. But add in the layer of curiosity to explore what would that feeling be once you experienced that creation that you're hoping to put into your life. Now, over the course of life, we're given a lot of messages. Some are given messages, young and old, that life is hard. You have to work hard. Focus, be serious. Treat people like you want to be treated, but at the same time, do more for others than you do for yourself, because otherwise you'll be selfish. We're given all of these messages through the course of a life, and to get to that place of feeling sometimes requires us to unravel some of those messages. To realize that by creating your life in the fullest, most complete way, by seeking those things that are going to create peace, love, and joy in your own life, you're going to have more of you to give to others and to be of service. So the paradox is, the more you complete yourself and spend that time to give yourself the permission to do that, the more you actually have to give to others. When you can tap into peace, love, and joy, you look backward in your life and those moments and times where you may have felt regret, you may have wished that you could have done something differently. The what ifs that tend to go through our minds, what if I would have done something this way or that way? When you step into peace, love, and joy, your essence of who you are, you no longer go backward and look at your life and have the I wish or the what ifs. Because every moment of your life, you're living it through the completeness of this soul part of you that is bigger, more complete, more loving, more blissful, more joyful than any of us could even comprehend here in a physical life. But when you step into that feeling, when you ask yourself, if I could feel the best I could possibly feel right now, what would that be? And then allow yourself to be curious to see how that's going to unfold in your life. And you will open up the door to living a life that can be truly joyful, peaceful, and loving.
And so